Don't lead like a general. Lead with kindness. Christy Pretzinger says that this is what you should do. Now, Christy Pretzinger transformed the landscape of healthcare content creation and transformed what it's like to work at a growing agency. As the owner and CEO of WG Content, Christy has established an industry-leading company that delivers superior content and strategy to healthcare brands nationwide. Now, the first question I have is, how can entrepreneurs lead with kindness?
Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu, mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services.
Well, hi, Lily. Thank you for having me. The way to, leading with kindness is really kind of, it's really actually who we are. It's how we're wired, but not many people access that in the business world. And I always want to be very clear that kindness is not just being nice. Kindness is things like boundaries. Clarity is kindness. All of those kind of things that are required of a leader, generally speaking, can be kind if done with the right energy behind it.
Thank you. Tell us more about your journey and how did you start doing what you're doing now?
Well, I was a freelance writer a long time ago. And then right around 2004, I started building this business. It was formerly called Writer Girl, and we kept that name until just last April when we changed it because it didn't really capture all that we do. So we are now WG Content. So we kept the WG as part of the Writer Girl and called it, then added content to the name and call it WG Content Strategy and Creation. So anyway, I started doing this just a very long time ago, built on my skills as a writer myself, and ended up finding a niche of bringing teams of writers to large hospital systems. And now we do that across the country.
Thank you. So what do they write about?
Well, when I say content creation, a lot of people automatically think social media and influencers, and that's not at all what we do. We do long form content. So we do things about, writing about conditions and treatments, and we can do things like physician bios. We do infographics. We also have done video scripting, podcast scripting, things of that nature. Our mission is building relationships one word at a time. And so we put that into action with each other and with our vendors and then with our clients, but also with their patient populations.
Thank you. How did you come to the conclusion that leading with kindness is better than leading like a general?
Well, it's funny because when I started building the business, I told my accountant at the time that if I couldn't build a business based on kindness, I would go back to being a freelance writer. And someone asked me recently on a podcast, I'd never been asked this question, but he said, so why is kindness your driver? Did you work with unkind people or for unkind people? And I thought, oh, that's a good question. And I realized that no, I had not worked for unkind people, but the structures within which they worked didn't foster kindness. So there's all sorts of things that organizations grow up and processes and structures grow without an intention towards kindness. And so when I answered that question, I realized that really explained a lot about how our business is structured, how the processes have evolved over time. And it's really leading with kindness is just kind of a moniker. I mean, I really do it, but it requires both attention and intention. But at the same time, the difference is like when you said, don't lead like a general, it's so much easier to be a general. You just tell people what to do. You literally give them marching orders. You don't care about their input or their opinion or their knowledge about the topic. And you expect them to get it done and you put them on a pip if they don't. So that's a very easy way to lead. For me, it doesn't lead to joy and it doesn't tie into my meaning and purpose about, being a kind person, letting everyone around you that you come in contact with know that they matter, that their actual hopes and dreams and fears and wishes and all the things about them matter. And then it comes through that you really are being kind. I actually do use the word love in business because in English, we only have that one word for love. But one of the definitions is genuinely wishing the well-being for others. And part of being kind is genuinely wishing the well-being of the people that work with you.
Thank you. What does that mean to really be kind? Like, how do entrepreneurs show it?
Well, there's a lot of things. It's really kindness is a soft skill. And it includes, I think, kindness isn't just one thing. I think it encompasses a lot of things, and all of which kind of level up to EQ or EI, whichever, emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, because you have things like vulnerability, you have empathy, kindness, openness, even like flexibility. All of those things all lead up, of course, into emotional intelligence. And in the same time, they're also kind. The more self-aware you are, the better of a leader you become. And in order to become self-aware, you have to really focus on that. You have to have an intention, and you have to give it attention. And as you become more self-aware, you automatically develop your empathetic skills. You can't help but do that. And when you become more empathetic, what happens at that time is that you also feel a little freer to be vulnerable. And so if you are a little bit vulnerable with the people that you lead, I'm not talking about ridiculous vulnerability, just admitting maybe you don't have the answers to everything, admitting that you don't know something instead of behaving like a leader that thinks they know everything. So if you do that, what happens when you show a little bit of vulnerability, then the people you're working with feel comfortable doing the same, and you're able to forge a relationship in that way.
Thank you. Give us an example of how a leader would act with kindness versus a leader would act as a general. And what I mean is, for example, would it mean that a leader that acts with kindness would say something like, I have this deadline and this is what I would like you to do. And by the way, I have no idea how to get it done. And I don't know what that would look like in terms of leading with kindness versus leading like a general.
Well, obviously, when you are a for-profit industry or business, you have to have deadlines, and there are certain things that are required of people's jobs. We are a time and materials business, so people have to track their time. Nobody likes it. I don't like it. We've tried really hard. A bunch of really smart people have tried to get rid of that, and we can't get rid of it. So we acknowledge, people say, I hate it. It's hard. I'm not good at it. And we say, I know. It's a pain in the neck. This is literally how we get paid. So it's acknowledging it, and instead of just being like, well, I don't care what you think, do it, and being mean about it. I think probably a better example would be if someone has had a change in their behavior. Maybe they start showing up late to meetings, or they are missing deadlines, things like that. That's not normal for them. Instead of just calling out the behavior and, kind of telling them next step is a PIP, or, you get 2 warnings or something, what we would prefer to do is have their manager talk to them after a meeting, if they're in there, and say, hey, do you have a second? And be curious, right? That's one of our values too. Be curious, like, hey, notice that, your behaviors have changed. You've missed a few deadlines and you're showing up late to meetings, and that's not like you. Can you tell me what's going on? And then if the person shares something to whatever level they're comfortable with, if they're having a personal situation, if they're going through a divorce, or if their child has a situation, then we're able to say, you are absolutely right to prioritize that. But what is not okay is to not tell us that you have an issue going on, because we can't help fill the gaps if we don't know that's happening. So that would be an instance of kindness and of inquiry and of curiosity, as opposed to being a general, just being like, you're not doing what I want, I don't like it, and this is a warning, do it one more time and you get in a PIP. That would be more like a general.
Thank you. Why is leading with kindness important to you?
Well, being kind has just been always kind of part of who I am. And so I wanted to build a business based on that, because I wanted people to treat me with kindness. And so as I was building the business, what was interesting to me, and I can only say this in retrospect, is that the people who were attracted to coming to working with me, and then as the organization grew, like attracts like, and more people with similar, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like vibration, for lack of a better term. They're kind of vibing with it, were attracted to it, and it kept building on itself. And I think that kindness is, to me, it's human, but I guess what I think about it, I wrote a book. I'm sorry, I'm kind of branching here. I'm thinking about my thoughts, but that I wrote a book called Your Cultural Balance Sheet. And it's about, obviously, keys to creating an environment where people can thrive. And as I was talking about that one day, I said that I think that it is aberrant for business owners to simply look at the bottom line only, to the exclusion of everything else. Now, of course, if you're a business owner, certainly you have to look at your financials, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to do so. But if you only look at your business through that lens, you miss a great opportunity. And by the way, it is antithetical to how we are wired as human beings. We are literally hardwired for connection and community. And so money is not something that it doesn't tie to anybody's purpose, unless your purpose is to get a lot of money so you can go do something else that brings you meaning and has purpose, right? Just money for money's sake. I mean, it's aberrant thinking. It's actually aberrant thinking. Now, let's be clear. I always have to say the caveat. You can build a giant business with absolutely no kindness whatsoever, and several very prominent people come to mind. So, it's very easily done. For me personally, it doesn't contribute to my mission, which is reinventing the way people look at the world of work and helping people become better human beings, which brings me joy.
Thank you. What small steps can entrepreneurs take in order to create a kinder work environment?
Well, I think the first step, honestly, is working on your own personal development with a focus on self-awareness. I don't believe that self-awareness can be overestimated in its importance to being an effective leader. And once you start doing that, as I was saying earlier, as you develop your self-awareness, you become a kinder person because you're accessing all of these things. By definition, becoming self-aware makes you kinder to yourself. I think we all could use that. That's just another human thing that we all have to work on at some point, our own self-worth. And so if you become kinder to yourself, it's easier to be kinder to others as well. So I would caution leaders to say that building an environment where people can thrive, leading with kindness, doesn't happen overnight. Trust and all of these things are a long game. And you have to have the intention to be kind, and then you have to pay attention to your behaviors, pay attention to the structures within your organization that you have established, pay attention to the procedures and policies that you have, and check and see, are these really the best thing, or are we just following some HR rule that really has removed the humanity from the process? So looking at all of those kind of things, it's a multi-tiered process, and it does not happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you. What are the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make that create an unkind environment?
In my experience, I would say there are several things, but one of them is entrepreneurs who think that they are the best at everything. Because they started the business, they think they are the best salesperson, they are the best this, they're the best that. That automatically is kind of dismissing the employee's experience, and not to mention skill set and talents and all the things they bring to bear to work for your organization. That doesn't feel good, for the employees. And I think that's a one-way path to a lack of loyalty and maybe not unkindness, but certainly not letting people know that they matter and not building an engaged workforce through behaving in that manner. I think that's a pretty big one.
Thank you. What kind of measures would you like to see entrepreneurs take in order to create an even kinder work environment?
I think you just kind of look at how you communicate. A lot of places do a sheet that's like the total benefits sheet, right? But a lot of times what I've heard is that the reason they do it is because they hear people grumbling about their compensation. And so they're like, well, hey, we're going to show you how much you actually cost. It's not just your salary. It's the paid time off. It's the insurance or benefits, whatever we give you, all the things that we give you. So here's the total. So there you go. So we do that, but we don't do it for that reason. In fact, what we say, it's called You Matter. That's what the worksheet is called, You Matter. And there's a paragraph that leads in that says, while your worth as a human being is invaluable, we can quantify your contribution to the organization and what we in turn, give to you in recognition of that contribution. And then we just do the total comp like anybody else does. But the way that we frame it is to let people know you matter. And this is how much your worth is priceless. We can't compensate you for that, but we can compensate you for the skills and talents that you put to work for the organization. And here's how we've done that.
Thank you. Tell us some perhaps bullet points from your book that entrepreneurs fail to think about that are important in creating a kinder environment.
I think that a lot of people miss the importance of creating a community, a safe psychological space. That can't be underestimated either. Simon Sinek says, when you take care of we, you take care of me, because we includes me. If you're only taking care of yourself, you aren't taking care of the whole picture, but we includes me. There's another group that I just listened to a podcast. I can't remember who they were. And they referred to it as your we-ness of the organization. So I think that not understanding how important that is and not actively working to create that, that can be a very big blind spot, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Tell us more about how entrepreneurs can become better leaders.
Well, as I've said before, not to beat a dead horse, work on your self-awareness. It's in my case, I had a lot of therapy. I worked with many coaches over the years. I learned the Enneagram pretty in depth, and we do use the Enneagram. It's a personality typing system for your audience that is ostensibly simple because it looks like it only has 9 types. There's more nuance to it than that, but as to dip your toe in, that's what it looks like. And what's interesting about the Enneagram, in my experience, compared to any other personality typing system that I've used, and I know there are many, this one looks at motivations for your behavior as opposed to your behavior. So when you start learning about your own motivations, that's contributing to your self-awareness. And it also makes you recognize some of your behaviors that might be off-putting that are actually caused by motivation to do something. In my case, everybody needs to be okay. So I can move really quickly through things because I want everyone to be okay. So I'm going to just move really quickly through that. That can be very off-putting for people. So learning about yourself and the behaviors that you as an adult can modify, the ones that might be off-putting to people that work with you, is probably the best thing you can do. And if you have access to therapy, absolutely do it. Because again, that helps peel back the layers of the onion and teach you more about yourself. And the more you learn about yourself, the more you understand that we have so much in common as human beings, much more in common than we don't.
Thank you. How can entrepreneurs deal better with preconceived ideas and assumptions they make about themselves and other people, and also how they are being perceived by other people?
Yeah, I think that, again, it's very easy I always have to remember that the seat I sit in, even though I genuinely love my employees, I have very close relationships with my leadership team, I still need someone that can fire them. I have no intention of doing that. I don't want anyone to ever leave, and we have very low turnover. But there's still that. You have to be aware of where you sit at the table. And I think another thing that is important to remember is that as the leader of the organization, sometimes I'm just kind of musing about ideas. And I have to be very clear, which is kind to be clear, to say, these are just ideas. No one needs to take any action on these things, or else you'll end up getting a report 2 weeks later that somebody spent hours and hours and hours on, and all you were doing was asking a theoretical question. It's really important to understand, the effect that your behaviors and your words have on people, and not just in a soft skills way, but in a way that if you're not clear about, I don't need you to do something with this, that you could send people, doing a bunch of needless work when all you were doing was, hypothesizing.
Thank you. How can leaders create assertive yet, you can say, impactful communication that will lead to the desired results and not soften it so much to people please and lead to a kind of a softer, less desired result?
Well, I think that that's why boundaries are kind and boundaries are important, because if you don't have boundaries, then if you do start behaving in a way, like if you get worried about people pleasing, as you just said, and you start doing that thing where someone asks you something and you hear people being like, yeah, I'll do it, it's fine. And it's really the opposite of fine. And so what happens with that, people become self-forgetting, they become resentful. They start acting in passive aggressive ways, which is what I just said. Things like, yeah, I'll do it. It's okay. And resentment builds, and then it can lead to burnout and people can leave. So boundaries is an incredibly important place to start. For us with clients, when we start out the relationship, we establish boundaries, saying, let's talk about the way we're going to work together so that we all know what's going to be happening here. For example, we're in the East Coast time, and if we work with clients in West Coast time, we tell them that generally our workday ends at 5:30 EST. Now, if they have needs and something is, urgent, we will absolutely help them, but that is the exception, not the rule. And that way, everybody's expectations are set, and it's fine. I think that's a hugely important thing to do, because when you have those boundaries with clarity, then you don't have to. You're not being a people pleaser. To your point, I don't think I could have said any better than that.
Thank you. How can awakened, kind leaders deal with cultural misunderstandings?
I'm really fortunate in that because I'm the leader of the organization, the people that are like-minded have been attracted to it. I'm not around a lot of that kind of thing. And so when it does come into my life, I'm always like, what are you doing? Why are you talking to me like that? I'm always a little bit caught off guard. So we don't have a lot of that, but I will tell you the reason we don't is because we stay on top of it. Like if one of my people on the leadership team, who has a whole team of people reporting to her, kind of starts hearing something and it's like, nothing's happening yet, but I'm wondering about XYZ. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we need to address that. We always try and be as transparent as we possibly can within reason. And that soothes people and tends to take away some of those things that might be causing, clashes in some way.
Thank you. People prefer to communicate with different communication styles. Some people prefer to, give you a phone call. Others prefer to text. Others, to WhatsApp or email. And I find that can lead to a lot of different confusions. First, for example, I prefer to speak by WhatsApp. Speak really to chat by WhatsApp or message. And, if not, by email, and calling is like my last resort type thing. But what I find is that a lot of times when you communicate through message, or email, it can lead to a lot of miscommunications. So I do wonder, how can kind, awakened leaders deal with different communication styles?
Well, if they're the leader, they can set the tone for how the communication should go. And I always have said that face-to-face is best, telephone is next, email is third, and text is a distant fourth, because those kind of messaging apps, whether it's WhatsApp or any kind of messaging, are a recipe for misunderstanding. People, especially, I'm of a different generation too. So I'm taking people back to relationships, real ones, face to face, eye contact, smiling, nodding, seeing the nonverbal signals that are going on in a relationship that you cannot see in any other kind of communication. I think that the problem with a lot of messaging apps, in my own experience, especially and this just sounds like I'm like, okay, boomer, but seriously, the shortened language, the lack of punctuation, the acronyms and all of that is actually really almost saying, I don't really have time to talk to you. This is not that important to me. Whereas actually speaking to someone and not using BRB or RN for right now, or all of those things, especially in the context of a business relationship. I'm not suggesting everything should be formal, but I am suggesting it should be human. I am suggesting that.
Thank you. How can awakened leaders deliver appropriate, effective communication through nonverbal communication?
Well, I think a lot of that is, the biggest thing is listening. I always say you have two ears and one mouth, use them accordingly. And that's I'm speaking to myself when I say that as well, to remind myself to stop talking frequently, stop talking and let the silence become uncomfortable, because eventually someone will feel comfortable speaking. And what happens in those gaps frequently is people who process differently have the time to process and respond. Like I, for example, am a verbal processor and I process quickly. Other people that I work with are people who process much more slowly, kind of it has to get into their body. They need to almost feel it, and then they can process it, and then they can respond. If I just keep talking in my way, I'm not going to hear the good information that they want to share because I'm shutting it down. So that's an incredibly important tool. I think probably above all is to stop talking frequently, stop talking.
Thank you. How can kind leaders show consideration?
Well, again, I think being curious asking people kind of what's going on. One of our favorite ones is when someone brings up something is we say, tell me more. They're like 3 magic words. Tell me more, because that invites the person you're speaking with to talk. And if you just keep saying, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Then you will eventually get to whatever it is that the person is trying to convey to you. And you're giving them the space to do that.
Thank you. How can kind leaders maneuver humor in a work environment in a way that it is taken in the right way and kind of lightens up the mood and doesn't have like a misunderstanding kind of effect?
Yeah, humor, you have to be careful with humor, don't you? Everybody has different senses of humor. The thing that I always find works is by being a little self-deprecating, that it's vulnerable. It's also amusing, not maybe laugh out loud funny, but it's amusing, and it can kind of lighten the situation. I mean, I will frequently say things like, I'm a verbal processor, and sometimes I don't know what I think until I say it, and sometimes it's actually kind of dumb. Then that lightens it a little bit, and people can be like, oh, okay, I get it. What she's going to say something, and then she may go, I think I just answered my own question. That was not something we should talk about anymore. So
thank you. Tell us a case study of something you did or another leader that you may know of has, or you've heard of, has done that kind of showcases what it feels like to lead with kindness.
I think that so much is tied up in this, in just that one word. And the thing that always comes to my mind is Brené Brown. I would have, back in 2010, before that, I would have gone to my grave saying vulnerability was weakness. Absolutely believed it, would have fought you about it. And I used to watch a lot of TED Talks, and I happened upon her most watched TED Talk of all time on shame and vulnerability. And it was so perplexing to me. And I probably watched it 10 or 15 times. And that really led me to where I am today. And that, like I said, how many years ago? 2010. That was a long time ago. So when I think of a brave leader, which I think being kind is brave. She talks about having a soft heart and a hard back, a stiff spine. That is incredibly wise as a leader. Because it's not weakness. Kindness is not weakness. I mean, you've got a strong spine. You just have an open, soft heart. So I often look to her books, to her talks, to all of those kind of things as the demonstration of a really good leader. Thank you.
Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you and your books.
You can reach me at wgcontent.com. There's an About Us. You can find all the information there. I'm also on LinkedIn, just Christy Pretzinger. That right now is all that I have. I'm not terribly active on Instagram, but once the book comes out, I'm sure I will be. So those are the 2 places where you can get in touch with me.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness.